It is interesting to note, according to the recent calculation, that over the past 250 years, 2 trillion tons of carbon dioxide waste from fossil fuel generation has been dumped into the atmosphere, with 1 trillion tons dumped during last 35 years. If energy usage doubles as predicted, another 2 trillion tons will be dumped before 2050. Because of this excessive carbon dioxide emissions, as stipulated by IPCC, carbon budget that may exceed by 2030. And it may create kind of catastrophic environmental disasters in the time to come. This will definitely result in many climate change issues with grave repercussions for all of us. Our duty to extra careful in preserving our precious natural environment. I think, as you all aware, the Stern report that clearly stipulated and clearly warned the global world political leaders on impact of climate change. According to this respected report, by 2050, at least 2% of the world GDP will shrink because of these climate events. As far as Sri Lanka is concerned, according to ADB, that figure would be 1.6% of the GDP. According to Stern report, as the business as usual scenario is going to be continued, then 5 to 20% of the GDP, the global GDP, will be shrunk. According to the ADB report, our GDP will be shrunk by at least by 6% because of these environmental disasters caused by climate change events. So it is in this context that the Ministry of Power and Energy has developed a comprehensive Sri Lanka energy sector plan for a knowledge-based economy. You all know that the current, the modern, or maybe the postmodern economic strategy would be the innovation, would be to form a kind of innovation economy, or else we called it knowledge-based economy. This is for the entire energy sector of the country, minimizing our dependence on importing fossil fuels for energy generation and to offer our citizens an affordable and cleaner and green energy in the future. We are now in the middle income territory, that is between 1,000 to 4,000 US dollars per capita, and we are moving into the upper middle income territory, that is 4,000 US dollars per capita to 8,000 US dollars per capita, and our ambitious aim is to achieve the developed states that is beyond 12,000 US dollars per capita. So we are not going to evaluate the other countries who are trying to achieve this goal. We should focus on 3 pillars. One is our economic prosperity, other one is the environmental sustainability, the third one, the most important one, the social equity and the individual happiness. That's what we are aiming for. Dear friends, this is the first time since many years that the entire energy sector institution have been joined under one roof, under one umbrella. This includes subject of power, renewable energy, petroleum exploration and development, distribution, and also atomic energy as well. Our main aim is to develop the entire energy sector institution into a collective synergetic mass so that efficiency and effectiveness of the entire sector will be improved, paving way for an ultimate energy security of the country. If you look at countries like South Korea, Singapore, Japan, Taiwan, which have developed remarkably during the past few decades, they have no natural resources of their own, but sheer determination of the leaders and the collective approach of the masses have led to their success. Therefore, in my belief, it is not the resources what matters, most, but the willpower and the unity of the people are the prime movers which drives the society. But this has to be supported by a good set of work ethics and equitable and justifiable social order. Especially during the past decade, we do not see any social justice or equitable system, so that our own entrepreneurs and industrialists were not free to operate and take positive action to develop this country. Instead, what we had was a bubble economy. First, it's a credit bubble, then the construction bubble, supported by a few favored individuals and cronies in the previous regime. I left that regime having realized that the government is going towards a self-destroying path, and left the government to speak against corruption, family bandism, and tyranny. On a present note, we have been successful in mobilizing the people of this country against the wasteful regime and bring about a change in government which was the need of the country. Dear friends, now we have different government and a president who understand democracy and good governance. We have been able to reduce the fuel prices and many commodity prices. Salaries of the public servants were increased, and many concessions have been given to our people. People can now live without fear. Now we have come to constitutional reforms, one of the most important promises, the political reformation that we badly need, and the most important step in our struggle for good governance. It is our belief that through the 19th or 20th Amendment, we must redistribute the powers of executive president among the main branches of the government, namely the legislature, cabinet, and the judiciary, including the president himself. We can't abolish this present executive presidency without having a clear the mandate directly from the people, because the president is directly elected by the people. So what we can do, what we can do is to democratization of the executive presidency. Redistribute the powers of executive presidency among the cabinet and restore the independency of the parliament and the judiciary. You can't abolish or prune down executive powers of one person, that is president, and give it to another person, executive prime minister. So we should rather democratize the whole process and create a kind of balance between these three institutions, the president, the legislature, and the judiciary. We need to be mindful about the prevailing level of corruption that has been instilled in our society as a process that was promoted at all levels. It is an environment, and we live in a corrupt environment without much attention. We must fight against this social enemy, which will create level playing field for all the players. As the business community and the leaders of the private sector, you should be able to help us to fight this social enemy. This will result in establishing the confidence of the people in democratic good governance, and it may create kind of social infrastructure. We have a physical infrastructure out there, and we need to create a social infrastructure. We need to promote kind of social capital so that all people, all individuals do have kind of equal opportunities and level playing ground. Dear friends, it has been calculated that nearly 50% of our export income has to be spent to meet our import demand of fossil fuel, which is equivalent to as approximately $5 billion annually. This is an astronomical figure which needs serious attention. This should not be continued if our country is to be developed, and we need to find alternative strategies to meet our energy demand sustainably and economically. We need to create our energy independence, energy autonomy, so that we will not be vulnerable to external shocks. As we meet today, world oil prices are at a very low figure, but rising again because of the Yemeni crisis there, and there will be a kind of relief to us because US and Iran struck kind of a new agreement on this nuclear problems, and we hope that our refinery will get the Iranian crude again. That will actually help us to lessen our financial burden there in Ceylon Petroleum Corporation. Therefore, it is an appropriate time for us to meet and discuss issues related to energy security and how our country should get prepared for a future uncertainties in the best way possible. I would like to start from current status of the power and energy sector. While it's concentrating on what will be the future as an environmentally conscious developing society as we pursue more energy options, in this regard, I intend to discuss our national plans with specific goals and timeframes. Another area of discussion would be the envisioned transparent pricing formula. We need kind of objective pricing formula for both fuel as well as the electricity tariff, which we intend to introduce in the near future, most probably after June this year. This has to be discussed with innovative financing mechanism and improvement of overall performance of the sector. We have to somehow take away the huge debts that are being there in CPC and CB, and we are going to introduce new financial instruments to take away these bad debts from CPC and CB. Your intervention and active participation as the business community in all these matters of importance is very important. An important aspect of our strategy is to provide a vehicle for all stakeholders to have a voice on issues of importance to our country in order to arrive at most feasible and acceptable solutions to our problem. That is why I am here today and speaking in more an open and inclusive manner. However, the task ahead of us is a difficult one, and path to success will not be easy. We have to work with the same set of individuals whose mindset have been constantly and systematically changed to suit the needs of the so-called leaders of the country. Having said that, let me now elaborate on what we intend to do in the energy sector, and then allow me to obtain your valuable views and inputs through mutually beneficial interaction so that we can adjust and redefine our policies, actions, and strategies for the betterment of our country. Dear friends, when I took over the mantle of Ministry of Power and Energy once again in January 2015, I thought it is better for us to obtain the views from the all stakeholders to formulate our future course of action before any policy decision is taken. This we did during the past few weeks with many interactions among top professionals from the institution under the purview of our ministry. Private sector institutions, professional institutions such as Institution of Engineers Sri Lanka, Institution of Chartered Accounts, bankers, private sector developers, etc. I assume this Sri Lanka Energy Sector Development Fund for a knowledge-based economy 2015-2025 is now being circulated among you so that we can look for a very fruitful discussion, and your valuable feedback is always welcome by us. Sri Lanka's new energy development plan, which is now in the public domain, is about reshaping our thinking and to prepare for future uncertainty of the global environment. The policies and actions we have formulated are of two kinds. Those that are currently being implemented or will be implemented within 3 stages, namely short-term, mid-term, and long-term, as part of the Sri Lanka's ongoing development drive. The short-term intends to implement the actions and policies required in line with the concept of new country in 100 days program of the government through the adoption or implementation of these policies and action. We hope to establish a new model via innovative approaches and sustainable energy utilization to achieve knowledge-based economy in Sri Lanka. The strategy is prepared under 8 thrust areas with the objective of providing reliable, sustainable, affordable, and high-quality energy supply for Sri Lanka's economic prosperity. The first 4 thrust areas that are there are namely integration of national energy policy formulation, a cleaner future through green energy, conservation and efficient use of energy, and customer satisfaction and service quality. Slide 4, please. The next 4 areas are dealing with timely development of necessary infrastructure, establishment of overall efficiency in energy sector institution and good governance, innovative financing for diverse energy sector, and finally, investment in research and development for cutting-edge product development. I assume that all of you will have access to this document through the web, or hard copy is already been given to you for necessary perusal. For an example, just to brief you about the initiative we intend to take in the green energy development, as shown in the presentation, is to have optimum level of renewable energy portfolio in our generation mix through an open and transparent competitive bidding procedure. We also intend to promote off-grid renewable application for small and medium scale users. As for our plan, it is envisaged to add a total of 1,114 megawatt of power through the renewable energy sources. Next slide, please. No, previous one. Right. Now we are at the middle income level category and striving hard to reach the higher income level category status, which is undoubtedly a challenging and daunting task. Now we can achieve this objective, and by what means is the problem we need to solve in real time. However, we are going to hand over a sustainable and safe country to live for our future generation. There has to be a balancing act between development and long-term environmental sustainability. Dear friends, now let me speak a few words about the petroleum sector, which I think our country needs to concentrate on a new perspective. It has been identified that Sri Lanka has some gas and oil deposits in Manna Basin. The precious natural resource should be used for the benefit of our own planning of upstream petroleum development, which has just begun. It is important to mention that during the first licensing round in 2007, one block was awarded to Cairn Lanka, and the first PSC was signed with Cairn Lanka in 2008. Subsequently, they have acquired 3D seismic data for an area of 2,400 square kilometers and a magnetic gravity of 5,700 kilometers, and drilled 4 number of exploration wells ranging 3 to 5 kilometers below the sea level, and 4 wells. 1 was technically failed, other provide nothing, but 2 wells provide gas deposits. Of these discoveries is now being pursued. In addition to second round of licensing occurred in 2013, and joint study blocks are on offer. There is a proposal to develop the Dorado field, the gas field, and lay subsea facilities together with an onshore gas processing plant supported by a 55 kilometer length and 10-inch subsea pipeline to Noracholi, and from that point to erect 150 kilometer onshore pipeline to Colombo, basically to Keralapitia, in order to provide liquid fuel to 630 megawatt of seaborne and private power plants and to other consumers. We are now evaluating the commercial viability of discoveries, sectorial demand analysis for the natural gas, economic feasibility analysis, and negotiating the price and other terms with the developer with the aim of signing conditional gas purchase agreement. This will be a strenuous process and hope that we will be successful. This will be a one step towards energy security, establishing Sri Lanka as a fluent hydrocarbon resource country, a showcase for future oil and gas investment. We also feel that this endeavor will develop domestic gas market and diversify our energy mix and lowering our generation cost. Furthermore, it is expected to increase the government revenue through taxes and royalty from gas and oil deposits. So far, the developer has spent approximately $215 million without any cost to the Sri Lankan government. So it is interesting to speak few words about oil transmission from Colombo Harbour to Colonau storage tanks. We all know through media that problems one has to face. Most of the pipelines are now covered by unauthorized structures such as houses and commercial buildings. one has to face many difficulties when trying to repair those pipes. There are frequent breakdowns, leakages due to lines being old, and we have started refurbishment process to strengthen two pipelines from Colombo Tunnel to Kalonnawa using our own indigenous resources and expertise as much as possible. Our engineering staff has to work under very difficult circumstances, sometimes temporarily ejecting people who have constructed their houses on the pipeline routes. You can see that. Plans are also underway to seek possibility of installation of a new single point biomooring system, PBM, of the offshore discharging of crude oil. In addition, establishment of fuel hydrant system and associated facilities at Bandaranaike International Airport, installation of a loading arm at Dolphin Pier and pipeline facility from Dolphin Pier to Tunnel Gate at Colombo Harbour, establishment of new bulk depot in Northern Province are some of the key infrastructure projects in the petroleum sector we are planning in the mid-term term. As a long-term strategy, we are planning to commence a feasibility study to refurbish or revamp or modernize the existing Sepukaskanda refinery, as this has been tuned to cater for Iranian crude oil, and also we are also considering the possibility of refurbishing Trincomalee oil tanks which have been idling for a long time. Let me now briefly outline some of the infrastructure projects in the power sector which needs your attention. It is well known fact that CEB is having rolling plan called Long-Term Generation Expansion Plan on least cost basis for the future construction of the generation capacity to meet the increase in demand for power as well as energy. According to this plan, it has been identified that the coal will be the only viable option for power generation in the immediate future. However, this will not be the prudent exercise if we consider the correct energy mix and correct energy security of our country. No country in the world will rely on a single source of power, how much economical that source would be for that country. In this scenario, we are now pushing for a more realistic and objective study for our future generation expansion program. Nevertheless, it is pertinent to say that two major coal power projects are now at the planning stage of construction in Trincomalee area. In addition, we need to continuously upgrade the existing electricity grid and re-engineering it to convert it to a smart grid and add new grid substation to evacuate power to load centers from power generating station. In order to evacuate more and more renewable energy, we have to re-engineer and we have to reconstruct our grid capacities as well. As a part of this exercise, a feasibility study is now being carried out to connect Indian electricity grid and Sri Lankan electricity grid. If we can achieve this SARC grid, huge pool of energy source will be there. That way you can simply evacuate more and more your wind potential and other renewable potentials like solar energy. This is an interesting technical and economic decision for our country, as we are blessed with considerable solar and wind power potential, but due to the grid limitation of our country and also the demand and the small scale of our grid, the stability issues, the technical stability issues, we might not be able to absorb this full potential. Therefore, our technical and economic planners should consider the possibility of evacuating this non-dispatchable energy through this connection. It is interesting to note that we have a huge wind potential. You can see this map that has been prepared by US Renewable Energy Agency. And in the northwestern corridor of the island, from Puttalam to Jaffna, this has been found that technical wind power potential with wind power capacity density above 8 megawatt per square kilometer estimated as 5,650 megawatt. You know that our peak power demand here in Sri Lanka is now about 2,100 megawatt. The capacity there in our wind potential is about well above 5,000 megawatts. And also if we focus on solar power, this is the solar radiation map. The solar power potential in Sri Lanka has been mapped out based on the spatial distribution of global horizontal radiation or GHI, which varies from 1,250 kilowatt hours meter squared year on the humid highlands to 2,100 kilowatt hours meter squared year in high potential regions. However, when we consider the land availability and exploitable solar power is estimated 6,000 megawatt. That is our potential. Of course, these are study results, and there are many constraints to harness all this potential energy, not to stand into the economic of scale. We cannot absorb all these non-conventional renewable energy due to technical, economic, and social parameters. Dear friends, it is worthwhile to mention two identified actions under energy security. We are now interested, that is to establish rapid charging stations for encouraging electrical vehicles and commencement of preliminary study for the development of infrastructure for railway electrification. Customer satisfaction and providing quality service to customers have been recognized as another key area which needs much improvement. This is significant as we have almost achieved the electrification of the whole Sri Lanka. Now it is 98%, and next step would be improve the quality of the service. In this regard, PUCSL, in consultation with CEB and LECO, has developed performance standards, grid codes, safety standards, etc. I am happy to inform you that recently we have launched for the first time in Sri Lanka the Statement of Rights and Obligation of Electrical Consumers and a Supply Service Code for the benefit of consumers. We are working on introducing pricing formula in the near future based on correct variables and indices for both electricity and fuel, so that the entire pricing process will be transparent to the general public. In conclusion, I hope our deliberation will help to achieve the aforementioned objectives in a professional and more meaningful manner. This is why I am here today. I need your support and your feedback. I thank you.